Hello, viewers, and welcome to the latest episode of The Huddle. I'm with Peter Schoenke, co-founder of RotoWire. Peter, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really excited to talk to you about all things fantasy, all things kind of affiliate business. To start off with, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in, I guess it's fair to call it a niche of the kind of this fantasy and affiliate crossover?
Yeah, well, I've been doing this for a long time. So, 1997 is when I started the company. I'm a former reporter for the Wall Street Journal and Dow Jones Newswires, and I covered the futures and options markets in Chicago. And my friends and I, Herb Ilk and Jeff Erickson, who I went to school with at Northwestern, we wanted to start a business. We had a bunch of ideas, and I ultimately said, we spend all this time on fantasy sports. Why don't we kind of create the Newswire? Kind of like my day job for fantasy sports. And so that we created the website and we've been doing it ever since and
Mhm.
still having a lot of fun. And fantasy sports has grown to a size that was just unimaginable back then.
Yeah, definitely something we'll touch on. I mean, so it sounds like a nice combination of sort of numbers, data, and words as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a total, stat geek, just obsessed about all that kind of stuff. So it worked out really well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a trajectory familiar with a lot of big names in the industry. I mean, Jason Robbins at DraftKings, he was he's often said he was just in his sort of day job, but just constantly running the numbers of the sports just in the
Yeah,
back of his
I mean,
mind.
he was a big RotoWire user before he was with DraftKings and was in like 300 football leagues. And, so we clicked right away when he started up his company as well. So.
Yeah, within the fantasy sector, you're the former chairman of the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association, and you'll therefore know Adam Wexler really well, who was also recently on the huddle.
Yeah, Adam and I go way back when he started his company, Side Prize. He was going to try to figure out a way that fantasy leagues could put money up against each other, when they're in the season-long fantasy football league. And RotoWire was actually the first company that did a deal with him and, helped him out and got him going. So, and obviously now he's gone on to great things with Prizepicks, and RotoWire has really been with him for that journey the whole time. And that's kind of the focus of, what we're doing now with the props and picks app. That's just a booming market of which, Prize Picks is the if not the leader among the leaders in the world for it. And that's been great to our growth, and we're trying to really hone in a product that really helps people play those contests.
A couple of nice precursors there because I will ask you about the prize and picks app, and I'm going to ask you about kind of the leading players in the fantasy market generally as well. But if we're to kind of zone in on RotoWire, the company itself, acquired by Gambling.com Group in, unless I'm mistaken, 2021. Um, how do you stand out? What's the kind of the USP and what's the base aim? What do you kind of wake up in the morning thinking this is what we want our users to get?
Well, I mean, the main thing is that, like I talked about our origin story, we built the site so that we, us, the founders, could do better in our own fantasy leagues. We always had kind of the mantra of, we build it for ourselves first, and then if we actually find utility in it, then we'll put it on the website because everyone else will want to use it. And that's kind of just been the ethos the whole time, and it's expanded now into sports betting and other markets. Such as the pick'em games, where we're trying to figure out how do we win? How do we provide value to someone that's trying to compete every single day? And so it's news, it's information, it's projections, it's who's in the lineup. And RotoWire is really kind of the world leader, I would say, in all of that kind of information. We have syndication deals, with other companies. So the information is not just on RotoWire, which is people subscribe to, and it's a great utility for that. But then other leading companies in the space have said, "Oh, you guys are the best at this. Let's put this on our website." So DraftKings, FanDuel, ESPN, NFL.com, even smaller sites that that run a lot of fantasy leagues like Fantrax or RT Sport. They all either utilize our content or partner with us in this picks and props app.
Mhm. It's funny whenever if I speak to someone in the fantasy industry, I usually have a little complaint about my performance in fantasy. And obviously, in the UK, it's a little bit of a different format. We kind of do traditional season long, but currently we've got the Euros and. Big news for the audience. I'm currently top of the work league, so fingers crossed. If anyone's watching this, I'm
Nice.
still there.
Nice. Well, I mean, we do all kinds of football,
Mhm.
across the globe. So
Yeah.
yeah, we have tools for that as well. So we have a big robust competition for that as well. So if there's a if you can record a stat for a sport, it can be there can be a fantasy sport,
Mhm.
and there we service over 20 plus sports, depending how you define leagues, from things like, college basketball and WNBA and even international cricket. So the market has grown tremendously in not just the US, but worldwide.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned your picks and props app. Yeah, tell us all about that from an introductory level to what you're really trying to kind of aim to do with the product.
Yeah, so you talked about Adam Wexler and Prize Picks and how we go back with them. And one of the things we did really when Prize Picks got going is we do projections for just about every player every day in professional sports, at least in the U.S. and most of the soccer leagues outside of the U.S. And we initially built this page for Prize Picks with our projections compared to the Prize Picks. Over unders every single day,
Hmm.
and it just got tremendous traffic. And you can see that with Prize Picks growing to an entity that, before COVID was very small to where last year they had, I think, over $2 billion in entry fees. And we just, we saw that journey the whole time. And so we decided to build a product, that was around that, and also the growing legal market for player props in the U.S., which obviously has also seen tremendous growth with DraftKings and FanDuel and all the players in that market as well. And so we decided to build that area on the website and just really blow it out. So that happened in the beginning of this year and or late last year. And so in the last 9 months, it's up 266%. It just kept growing and growing. And what we noticed about this market is they're people who are using their mobile devices. It's just become really mobile centric, more so than even fantasy sports and DFS, which was very mobile as well. And so we decided that we need to be where they're playing these things. And so that's why we decided to build a mobile app. We made it on Android and Apple iOS, so we could be on both platforms. And we've seen a good uptick in it initially. Obviously, it just got going, but we're pretty happy with the initial results, and we're pretty bullish on the market for it this fall when the sports calendar comes in full force.
Yeah, fantastic. And in terms of maybe the longer term roadmap, is it very much just because it's new, take things as they come for now, or have you kind of got any plans thinking, 2025 we'll up it to this, 2026 maybe we'll add these features, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there's more. There's definitely more coming. I mean, more sports. If you look at the number of sports that both the Pick'em sites and the sports books cover, it's growing all the time. Prize Picks in particular has added esports. There's a lot of esports competitions.
Mm.
We've added that recently to the Picks app. So I think you'll see more sports and you'll see more features as we get more feedback and learn more stuff in terms of data that we can show and information. We're always learning as we play these games, and we're very responsive to user demand. So that when, our customers say, this is great, but we'd really like to see this on it, we take that to heart and build it out. So yeah, we've got a roadmap of a number of things to improve the product
Hmm.
between now and fall. But at the same time, we think it's pretty good right now and it will really help you. And, think of what it tries to do is it really just tries to not necessarily make picks for you, that we have this, magical winning formula that's going to make it so that you win. I mean, that's incredibly difficult to do, but just, is a sort of a one-stop center for all the information you need to make the best pick. So it's, who's hurt, who's playing, what the projection is, the comparison to the projection, not only on RotoWire, but also compared to the market, what the DFS, 2.0 sites say, what the sports books say, and so then you can kind of look at those factors together. We have a recommendation for what the best pick is, but you can also do your own research. You can look at the RotoWire projection and say, yeah, I just don't, I'm not buying that,
Hmm.
or he's been so hot lately. I just got to go with it. Things like that. And so it's a great tool to do that. Otherwise, you might spend your time on 4 or 5 sites and searching the internet and looking on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. And that takes time. And ultimately, RotoWire is about saving you time and making you more informed so that it's a more enjoyable experience. That's what we did with season long. That's what we did with DFS. I mean, it's just a one-stop shop to get everything you need to make the best decisions you can, and then you can play the games and have fun time with them.
Sure. You mentioned sports betting earlier, and so we've on the huddle we've had a lot of affiliates. We've had several fantasy operators, but fantasy affiliates specifically, we've not necessarily spoken too much to. And in terms of a niche, I'm just wondering how it compares, maybe being an affiliate for a fantasy versus a traditional kind of sports betting, sports wagering affiliate site.
Yeah, so I mean, RotoWire has affiliates, so that if people, we have some deals with companies that way, so that when somebody
Mhm.
comes, when we send a if we send a new user to some fantasy site, we get we make some money and help that way for advertising. But we also make money. Our primary focus is subscriptions, so people subscribe to RotoWire.com to
Mhm.
get our information, and then we also syndicate our information to the DFS and fantasy sites, like I talked about before, FanDuel, DraftKings, Yahoo, ESPN.
Yeah.
So we have a couple different ways to make money. And the thing about fantasy sports in the US is that it's still growing. It's still doing really great. And with the legalization and of sports betting, the law that enabled each state to actually, pass a law to have sports betting, there was kind of a notion and an idea that well, fantasy's that's it for fantasy. Everybody was just playing
Mm.
fantasy because they couldn't actually bet in the US, right? I think a lot of people really thought that, or DFS would not increase anymore because why are you gonna play DFS when you could just, bet or something like that? And that's not the case. I mean, fantasy sports keeps growing. I've seen companies like Prizepicks and Underdog and Sleeper that have come up with new models. They're all raising money and growing really well. And so, kind of just the core, market for RotoWire and kind of the ways that we make money in the industry have done really, really well. Then you add on top of that sports betting,
Mhm.
which is why we hooked up with gambling.com 2 years ago to really help that. And obviously they have great affiliate business and really know what they're doing. So they've been able to add that to RotoWire. We've been able to really blow out our sports betting information and that area as well. And so that's done really well, for RotoWire and for gambling.com at large. And it's been a great marriage and continues to go strong.
Yeah, I mean, you've done my job for me because my next question was going to be, despite the rise of sports betting, the consensus I'm hearing is, I mean, exactly what you just said. So I don't need to ask that question because the health of the fantasy sector really is going strong, and kind of Adam Wexler said the same. Obviously, it's fantasy people that I'm hearing this from, but that doesn't mean it's a lie. Like you can see from the
Well,
numbers,
it kind of just lifts all boats, but and it's all there's so much synergy, right? I mean, if
Mhm.
you're betting on the teams and looking at the spreads and you're doing all that kind of stuff and your sides and totals, you probably also have a fantasy team and you're analyzing the players and so I just think that it's not it's not one or the other. You're
Yeah.
just gonna do more, and that's kind of the way we've seen it. The amount of money that people are spending is going up, the number of teams they're playing, the number of either sports betting plus fantasy is all growing. And I think that'll keep going. I don't think the market is tapped out by any means in terms of the people who are playing these games and are really into it. Their attention span hasn't been limited yet. They
Mhm.
they just keep playing more and more and more. And I think that pattern has a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of analogies, it's kind of like it's not the slice of the pie; it's the pie getting bigger, as you say,
Yeah.
kind of more things to. And I can relate totally now when I watch a sports game. I mean, I still love the actual sports, but it's so fun to have. You might have a bet, you might have a fantasy pick, and you can do several things at once while you're doing the same thing. So as you say, synergistic. I think is probably the synergies is probably the best word to use, like you just said there.
Yeah. I mean, so like the US market, the North American market, US plus Canada, is up to 62.5 million people who play fantasy sports, right? And then, sports betting, obviously, it was a big market. Much of it was illegal, but now it's all legal. And that's, 23% of Americans, I'm looking at this FSGA research, of which I was the chairman from
Mhm.
this last year, place to bet on sports. 19% of Americans played fantasy sport. And there's a lot of crossover who are doing both. So it's a really robust market and, still has a ways to go. Yeah, especially on the sports betting side where, hopefully we'll get some more states that will legalize it. And we'll see a lot more operators and things like that, come up with innovations and expand the market. But yeah, it's still robust and growing but in both areas. And then, like I said, it just combines um, to create more stuff. And, this picks and props app in that area is part of that, where a
Mhm.
lot of, it's kind of intertwined and a lot of these games have similar characteristics and that, we're benefiting from that.
Yeah, a question I love asking kind of on the affiliate side is, we touched on it earlier. Who are the biggest players in the market? Obviously, you got your FanDuel's, DraftKings, ESPN, Prizepicks. Um, you know, who's who's really kind of come on strong this last year? Who's doing well in general? Tell us all about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, Prize Picks, I told you, we talked about that earlier. they went from, basically a startup to, multi-billion dollar in entry fees, in the last like 3 years, just incredible growth. Underdog is another one.
Mhm.
They've really emerged the best ball as a product in the US. That's a way to play season-long fantasy sports without having to do transactions all year long. You just draft it once, and they've seen a lot of growth in that. They've gotten into sports betting. Those are, there's not a company called Sleeper in the US, that does season long. Um, leagues. They have a really great app. They've expanded into, Pick'em as well. Those companies are all kind of at the forefront of the innovation and coming up and pushing the envelope. But the traditional companies are also doing really well. I mean, ESPN, Yahoo, they have the traditional free season-long leagues. They're still growing. Every year I look to see how are they doing. That's kind of
Yeah.
bellwether for the industry, and every year they grow. Obviously not at like a double-digit huge clip every year, but they have such a huge base of hundreds of millions of users playing these games, and they still grow every year. And then you've got the DFS companies, FanDuel and DraftKings, who obviously have also added sports betting to the mix with legalization in US. But that market still, their DFS side of the business still does well, still grows. I mean, the contests are still big. We still get a lot of users out of those. So that's kind of like the leaders in the space. There's obviously a lot of companies behind that, too many for me to name, that we work with and partner with and have people that use RotoWire to play their games. That are really robust and have great markets. Something like the National Fantasy Football Championship, which is coming up, where you can win hundreds of thousands of dollars in a season-long prize. We're partnered with them. So there's just a lot of formats and ways to play, and that's kind of the landscape, but
Mhm.
it's all doing really, really well. I mean, there's, like I said before, you would have thought before the legalization of sports betting that maybe one of those sectors would kind of slow down. But even something as old school as the National Fantasy Football Championship, season long, high stakes, you put in $1,000, you win hundreds of $1,000s. That's growing at leaps and bounds these days, and that just speaks really well to the whole ecosystem.
Mhm. What's interesting is the amount of time season long came up there because obviously in today's market, it's kind of maybe shorter attention spans. As you say, the attention spans are not getting limited, but in general, I suppose you'd say it's slightly shorter these days, and the kind of daily fantasy and things like that. But season long still going strong.
Oh yeah, still doing great. Like I said, the biggest companies, the longest companies that have been doing this, ESPN and Yahoo, they have the free leagues. People will enter for free and play. And usually with 12, 10, 12 of their friends. I mean, a lot of these leagues, they'll have side prizes where the money doesn't necessarily flow through Yahoo, but they might have, amongst themselves, I'll put in 10, $100 or something like that to come with the prize. That's still the biggest part of the US market for fantasy. And those people will buy information to help them win. RotoWire's among the main places that you can do that. There's obviously we have a lot of competition too. That market's just doing really well. But what I always look at that is because then those users eventually, start playing more products, right? So they'll, oh, I'm pretty good at this. I'm going to try a National Fantasy Football Championship game. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go to, FanDuel or DraftKings and enter, an NFL line, team just for this weekend, right? Oh, well, I really have a good read on, the wide receivers and who's going to do the best each week. So, now we have legal sports betting in my state. Well, I'll go over to the DraftKings, sports book, and they only have the over under for this player's yardage for receiving at 69 yards this week. Oh, I mean, I've been watching him in fantasy for like the last couple of weeks. He's doing awesome. I'm going to take the over on that.
Hmm.
So that's just kind of the natural evolution of kind of how it works in the US. And I think that's one of the reasons why player props are, a bigger part of the market than Europe, because people in the US, even outside of betting and fantasy, always were obsessive about stats compared to Europeans. But then on top of that, the growth of fantasy sports is just a natural way for people to obsess about stats. And then, now they can play pick 'em with these games, or, player props. And it's just a natural extension of that, because people are conditioned to look at athlete performance in terms of their statistics, and they know the key benchmarks, whether it's receiving yards each week, or, number of home runs they hit, or anything like that. And so they can go in there and look at the numbers and quickly assess, whether they think that's an opportunity or not.
Mhm. Well, Peter, thank you very much for your time. Been really interesting talking all this through. I mean, it sounds like a bit of a boom time for fantasy, as we've discussed. Best of luck in the future, and it does sound like we're going to see at least a little bit more growth in the coming years.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I could talk all day about it. It's an exciting, fun market, and it's still as fun as when I started it, 27 years ago.
Brilliant. Well, to our viewers, thanks for watching, and Peter, thanks again.
All right, thanks a lot. Bye.